The revelation shook Azara to her core. If Reeves was telling the truth, the conspiracy was vaster and more insidious than she had ever imagined. The fate of not just the Zerosian Empire, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Any doubts Azara might have had about her chosen path vanished. She knew now, with grim certainty, that she had to see this through to the end, no matter the cost. But even as the Indomitable set course for the rendezvous with Prince Dorian, a new threat emerged. Kallax, having tracked their movements, launched a surprise attack, his ship materializing from the void like a predator pouncing on its prey. The Indomitable shuddered under the assault, its shield straining under the barrage of Zerosian weaponry. On the bridge, Vance barked orders, her crew scrambling to return fire and keep the ship together. In the chaos, Azara made a decision. She knew Kallax, knew his tactics and his weaknesses. If anyone could buy them the time they needed, it was her. She slipped away from the bridge, making her way to the hangar bay. As she climbed into a fighter, she thought of the humans she had come to know, of Vance and her unwavering determination, of Michael and his gruff kindness. For them, for the chance of a future free from war, she would face Kallax. The fighter launched into the void, a silver dart against the blackness of space. Azara's hands were steady on the controls as she accelerated towards the Nighthawk, ready to face her destiny. The final stand. Azara's fighter danced through the void, weaving between the lances of energy fire from the Nighthawk. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her hands were steady on the controls. She knew every inch of Kallax's ship, every strength and every weakness. On the Indomitable, Captain Vance watched the lone fighter engage the Zerosian warship with a mixture of awe and dread. She had come to respect Azara, perhaps even to trust her, but this was a suicide mission. "All power to shields," she barked. "Prepare to provide cover fire on my mark." In the fighter, Azara activated her comms. "Kallax," she said, her voice steady. "This ends now." The enforcer's reply was a snarl of static. "Traitor," he spat. "You will pay for your betrayal." Azara smiled grimly. "We'll see." What followed was a dance of destruction, a blaze of weapons fire and screeching metal. Azara pushed her fighter to its limits, using every trick she knew to stay one step ahead of Kallax's guns. But even as she fought, she knew it wasn't enough. The Nighthawk was too powerful, its defenses too strong. She needed an opening, a moment of vulnerability. It came with a sacrifice. Ensign Reeves, the unmasked Zerosian mole, had escaped in the chaos of the battle. Now, in a moment of startling clarity, he saw the true face of the empire he had served. He opened a channel to Azara. "Princess," he said, his voice raw. "I was wrong. About everything. Let me make it right." Before Azara could respond, Reeves fired his own fighter's engines, sending it on a collision course with the Nighthawk's bridge. The impact was tremendous, a blossom of fire and debris that shattered the warship's shields. Azara seized the moment. She fired, her weapons tearing into the Nighthawk's exposed hull. Explosions rippled along its length as its systems went critical. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Vance watched in disbelief as the Zerosian ship broke apart, consumed by the fires of its own destruction. Against all odds, Azara had done it, but the victory was short-lived. As Azara's fighter limped back to the Indomitable, a message came through. It was Prince Zorian, Azara's brother. "Azara," he said, his face grave. "I received your message, and you're right. Father has been manipulated, the empire twisted into something dark and cruel. It has to end." In the days that followed, the truth came out. The conspiracy was exposed, the warmongers within the Zerosian leadership brought to justice, and in a historic moment, Emperor Zorin and the leaders of the human resistance met to discuss peace. It was a fragile thing, this peace. Centuries of war and hatred could not be undone overnight. But as Azara stood beside Captain Vance, watching the first tentative steps towards a new future, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Do you think it will last?" Vance asked quietly. Azara smiled. "I think," she said, "that it's a start." And somewhere out in the vastness of space, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was taking a breath, ready for a new chapter to begin. The Fall of Zeros. Princess Azara stood on the bridge of the Zerosian flagship, the Eternal Conquest, her heart pounding with anticipation. The view screen displayed the blue-green orb of Earth, the last bastion of human resistance. For decades, the Zerosian Empire had waged war against humanity, conquering countless worlds and subjugating their populations. Earth was all that remained. Azara's father, Emperor Zoran, had entrusted her with leading the final assault. Success would cement her position as heir to the throne and prove her worth as a leader. Failure was unthinkable. All ships, commenced the attack. Azara commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The Zerosian fleet surged forward, a countless array of sleek, angular ships bristling with advanced weaponry. Earth's defenses, a ragtag collection of vessels and orbital platforms, seemed pitiful in comparison. Azara allowed herself a small smile. Victory was assured. But as the Zerosian ships entered weapons range, something unexpected happened. Space itself seemed to ripple and distort, and a massive fleet of human ships appeared as if from nowhere. These were not the primitive vessels Azara had expected, but rather sleek, powerful warships that rivaled the Zerosian fleet in size and apparent technological might. The human fleet opened fire, a barrage of energy beams and missiles that tore through the Zerosian ships like a scythe through wheat. Azara watched in disbelief as her flagship shuddered under the impacts, its shield straining to hold back the onslaught. "Impossible," she whispered, her hands gripping the command chair until her knuckles turned pale. Where did they come from? The battle raged around her, the once proud Zerosian fleet reduced to burning husks and drifting debris. The Eternal Conquest shuddered again, a series of explosions ripping through its hull. Alarms blared, and the bridge was plunged into darkness, lit only by the flickering emergency lights. "Princess, we must evacuate," her second-in-command urged, his voice edged with panic. "The ship is lost." Azara hesitated, the bitter taste of defeat on her tongue. But she knew he was right. With a nod, she followed him to the escape pods, the corridors filled with smoke, and the screams of the dying. As her pod jettisoned from the dying flagship, Azara watched the remnants of her fleet being torn apart by the human ships. The Zerosian Empire had been on the cusp of its greatest triumph, and now it faced its greatest defeat. And she, Princess Azara, would be forever remembered as the one who led them to it. The pod shuddered, caught in a tractor beam from one of the human ships. Azara closed her eyes, preparing herself for the end. But deep within her, a small traitorous part wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, this might be a new beginning. Unlikely allies. Captain Nora Vance of the EHS Indomitable watched the Zerosian escape pod drift into the shuttle bay, a frown etched on her face. The occupant had already been identified. Princess Azara, heir to the Zerosian throne, and the leader of the failed assault on Earth. As the pod door hissed open, Vance and her security team tensed, weapons at the ready. But the figure that emerged was not the arrogant, conquering warrior they had expected. Azara looked haggard, her once pristine uniform torn and scorched, her eyes haunted. She raised her hands in a universal gesture of surrender. "I seek asylum," she said, her voice hoarse. "In exchange, I offer information, military secrets, weaknesses in my father's empire, anything you need to end this war." Vance's eyes narrowed. This could be a trick, a ploy to infiltrate and sabotage from within. But something in Azara's eyes, a desperation and sincerity, gave her pause. She made a decision. "Lower your weapons," she ordered her team. "Escort the princess to the brig. I want a full security detail on her at all times." As Azara was led away, Vance's second-in-command, Commander Mikhail Petrov, approached her. "Captain, are you sure about this? She's Zerosian royalty." She can't be trusted. Vance sighed. I know, Michael. But we're at a tipping point in this war. If her information is genuine, it could save countless lives. We have to take the chance. Over the next few days, as the Indomitable journeyed back to Earth, tensions ran high. Many of the crew, having lost friends and family to the Zerosians, viewed Azara with open hostility. Vance had to break up more than one altercation. Things came to a head when a crew member, a young ensign who had lost his entire family in a Zerosian raid, attempted to assassinate Azara in her cell. Only the quick actions of her guards prevented tragedy. Vance confronted Azara in the break. I'm trying to give you a chance, she said, frustration evident in her voice. But my crew has suffered at the hands of your people. You need to give me something, anything, to justify the risk I'm taking. Azara met her gaze unflinchingly. I understand their anger, she said softly. I've seen the atrocities committed in my father's name. That's why I'm here. I want to end this, to find a better way. Please, let me help. Vance held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But understand this. If you betray us, there will be no second chances. As she left the brig, Vance couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point. For better or worse, the fate of the war, and perhaps the fate of both their peoples, now rested on the shoulders of an unlikely alliance. The hunt begins. Emperor Zoran's rage shook the very foundations of the palace when he learned of his daughter's betrayal and the defeat at Earth. His advisors cowered as he paced the throne room, his eyes blazing with fury. Azara has betrayed us, he seethed. She has sided with the humans and must be punished for her treachery. I want her found and brought before me, along with the heads of those who shelter her. He turned to a tall, muscular figure standing in the shadows. Kalax, my most trusted enforcer, you will lead the hunt. Bring my daughter back, and destroy any who stand in your way. Kalax bowed, his eyes glinting with cruel anticipation. It will be done, my emperor. As Kalax's ship, the Nighthawk, set out in pursuit of the Indomitable, Azara was working tirelessly with Captain Vance and her crew to evade Zerosian patrols and navigate the uncharted regions of space. Azara's knowledge of Zerosian tactics and technology proved invaluable. Under her guidance, the Indomitable was able to avoid detection and outmaneuver the enemy ships sent to hunt them down. Despite initial distrust, Azara slowly began to earn the respect of the crew. Her willingness to help, her evident sorrow over the actions of her people, and her determination to find a peaceful solution started to chip away at the animosity. One particular incident cemented her growing bond with the humans. During a supply run on a remote planet, a team from the Indomitable was ambushed by Zerosian forces. Azara, who had insisted on accompanying the team, risked her own life to save a wounded human soldier, dragging him to safety under heavy fire. As she tended to his wounds back on the ship, the soldier, a grizzled veteran named Michael, looked at her with newfound respect. I lost my brother to the Zerosians, he said gruffly. I never thought I'd owe my life to one. Maybe you're different after all. But even as bridges were built, danger loomed. Kalax, relentless in his pursuit, was closing in. When the Nighthawk finally caught up to the Indomitable in the orbit of a gas giant, only Azara's quick thinking and knowledge of a nearby asteroid field allowed them to escape. As the crew celebrated their narrow escape, Vance pulled Azara aside. We can't run forever, she said grimly. We need a plan to end this war, once and for all. Azara nodded, a determined glint in her eye. I might have something, but it won't be easy, and it will require us to trust each other more than ever. Vance held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Tell me. Revelations and betrayal. As Azara outlined her plan to Captain Vance, a sense of unease settled over the Indomitable. The princess's knowledge of Zerosian secrets had been invaluable thus far, but what she was proposing was risky. A direct confrontation with Zerosian forces to expose a conspiracy at the heart of the empire. My father didn't start this war alone, Azara explained. There's a faction within the leadership, a cabal of warmongers who have been manipulating the conflict for their own gain. They're the ones who pushed for the invasion of Earth, who orchestrated the most brutal campaigns. If we can expose them, we might be able to end this." Vance frowned. "And how do you propose we do that?" Azara hesitated. "We need to get a message to my brother, Prince Saurian. He's always been more cautious, more open to diplomacy. If I can convince him of the truth, he could be a powerful ally." The plan was met with skepticism from the crew, but Vance eventually agreed. As preparations were made, however, Azara found herself questioning her own loyalties. She had turned her back on her people, on her own family. Was she truly doing the right thing? Her doubts were compounded by the discovery of a mole within the Indomitable's crew, a series of suspicious incidents, a sabotage airlock, a compromised computer system, led to the unmasking of Ensign Thomas Reeves as a Zerosian agent. Under interrogation, Reeves revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. "You have no idea what you're up against," he sneered at Vance and Azara. "This goes beyond the military, beyond even the Emperor. There are forces at work here that you can't begin to comprehend."